Salam, peace. This is Imam Malik Mujahid. I hope you are all doing great. You're watching Galaxy 19 satellite, Amazon Fire TV, Raku Muslim Network.tv, and many other on social media. The world was coming closer to each other, and people were learning to work with each other better. And that continued to rise. Berlin Wall was gone, and people were chipping away and taking souvenirs from it. 27 countries in Europe. You remember Europe? These are the people who fought for 300 years with each other and gave the world what they call World War II and World War I, which were actually European wars fought all around the world. They grew up so much that they demolished borders between 27 countries. I remember that. Then a cycle began. Cycle of war, terrorism, and hate. Hate essentially Islamophobia. So war, terrorism, and Islamophobia cycle. Close to 4 million Muslims, according to scholars, were murdered since that cycle began about 20 years ago. That cycle continues. But not many of our neighbors know about it. While that was happening, right-wing nationalism started rising as well. And then suddenly you have Muslim ban, and you have Latino walls, and Palestinian being surrounded by strange type of zigzag walls all around them. And the world has started dividing itself, and tribalism has started rising. And now the pandemic has arrested us and detained us in our all homes. So what happened? Here was the globalization, the humanity coming together, and good things were happening in the midst of this big reaction, nationalistic reaction, tribalistic reaction. And in the midst of all of that, what we find is that Hindus, they took over, an Indian government gave them a 500-year-old historic mosque called Babri Masjid. That was the big name, but there are several thousand mosques in India which has been taken over actually. One of that old mosque was given by Indian government to Dalai Lama to open his offices there. He is still there. It's called Dharamshala. And now we hear that Turkey has taken Hagia Sophia, which was a museum for last 80 years or so, but was a mosque for 500 years. And before that, it was a church for 500 years. All the crusaders were coming through that. That Turkey has turned it back into a mosque in a big way. And the West is saying, why are you doing that? And the Muslims have difficulty understanding what is doing it. To discuss what is happening in the world today, especially between faith communities, we have someone who has heavily invested in interfaith. Do interfaith people like to have difficult conversation? Can we talk about Hagia Sophia and Babri Mosque and things of this nature? Can we talk about what Turkish people say, several thousand mosques which has been turned into churches in Europe? Can we discuss difficult things? Most likely he does. And his name is Imam Shamsi Ali. Welcome. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam wa barakatuh. Thank you for having me. Such an honor to be with you today.
Imam Shamsi Ali is the most prominent Imam of Indonesian heritage in the United States. And not just the Indonesian heritage, but in New York, he is probably among the 2-3 Imams which a whole city knows about. is the chairperson of Al Hikmah Mosque and the director of Jamaica Muslim Center in Jamaica, Queens, in the New York City, among many other things. I don't know how you do all of those things, Imam, but tell me, can people of interfaith discuss difficult issues? Can Muslims in America talk with Jewish interfaith partners about liberating Palestine? Is the just thing to do?
Yeah,
Are these conversation possible?
yeah, certainly. It is a difficult conversation, but I think one of the moral ground that we have in our effort to build bridges of understanding between communities is about honesty and openness. And I often say to my Jewish colleagues, friends, partners in the interfaith that we can disagree without being disagreeable, and we can disagree on many things, because dialogue doesn't mean that we have to agree on every single thing. You know, even within a family, you always have different opinions. You know, between Abrahamic faiths, Jewish and Christians, say we are cousins, and as cousins, of course, we have a lot of commonalities. We have a lot of similarities, but at the same time, we have to acknowledge the existence of difference that we have, particularly when it comes to the Jewish-Muslims relations. We know that these are the most common faith traditions, Islam and Judaism. From the concept of God down to many traditions that we have, both of us, even to similarities of the language that we're practicing as religious language. We say the Hebrew and Arabic, for example, Salam and Shalom and others. They pray 5 times daily facing Jerusalem. We pray 3 times. We pray 5 times daily facing Makkah al-Mukarramah. So we have a lot of commonalities. They believe in prophethood. We believe in prophethood, although they reject Jesus and Muhammad, peace upon them. But still, they believe in scripture. We believe in scripture. So in terms of religions, these are the 2 most common religions, Islam and Judaism. But we have to acknowledge the existence of deep differences in terms of some issues, including the issue of Palestine and Israel. You know, for us Muslims, it is fundamental to keep in mind that Jerusalem and Al-Masjid al-Aqsa is the 3rd holiest in our faith as Muslims. And we have to be open. We have to be honest in the discussion. It's not easy sometimes, but I think they began to understand that it is a passion for the Muslims to talk about this.
So you mentioned word cousin, referring to Jews and Muslims and Christians.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I have heard this term being used in the Muslim community often in their enthusiasm for interfaith. But have you seen other faith people considering or mentioning in their circles that we are cousins?
I don't know what is happening behind the door, but at least in front of us, they say that we are cousins. And it's taken from certainly Ibrahim alayhi salatu wassalams have 2 sons, Ishaq and Ishmael. And from Isaac, we know that came down many prophets, Prophet Yaqub or Jacob, down to Prophet Joseph and the 12 brothers, down to David, Solomon, Moses, Aaron, and many other prophets. Our Christian friend then add John the Baptist and Jesus Christ. So from that side, and now we came from Ismail alayhi salatu wassalam. But when we talk about prophets, we talk about faith in our understanding. But for our Jewish friends, mostly they talk about blood relationship, you know, racial or ethnic relationship bounds. It's not necessarily faith issue. And so there is basically a very huge different definition of what does it mean to be cousin when we Muslims use that terminology, while the Jewish friends are using it. But by the way, they mentioned that in front of our eyes, in front of openly to us, but I don't know what's happening behind the door. But by the way, we agree that you know, Jewish, Christians, and Muslims are possibly can be considered one you know, historical religious family, because we came all from the same monotheistic view of the religion, from Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam. And Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam is considered the father of the many prophets, Abul Anbiya, the father of the prophets, because from him came down many prophets that may consider, you know, a prophet of Judaism, prophet of Christianity, and of course accepted by Islam as a part of a unifying concept of prophethood in our religion, that لا نفرق بين أحد منهم. So the prophet they believe in, we believe as our prophet too. And unfortunately, the prophet that we believe in, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they reject that. And even though recently, in the last few years, because of the intense dialogue that we have, some of our Jewish friends and Christian friends, began to at least acknowledge. I don't call it belief, but acknowledge that Prophet Muhammad is a prophet of God. And so I think we are.
That's Imam Shamsi Ali. That's a major information which you're sharing with our audience on Muslim Network TV, that you have seen some of the Jewish and Christian leaders are now acknowledging Prophet Muhammad as Prophet Muhammad, while of course they don't believe in him. But this is something not many Muslims know, to my knowledge.
Sure. Not only Prophet Muhammad. Let's talk about Prophet Ishmael. Ismail alayhi salatu wasalam. I still remember in the beginning when I began this journey of Jewish-Muslim interfaith, dialogue. I knew then that many Jewish rabbis denied Ishmael as the son of Abraham, simply because he came from a mother that is historically known as a black woman, Hajar alayhi salatu wasalam. And even they consider Hajar was a slave. Even later on, we found that many historical remains mention that Hajar was not a slave because she was a daughter of a king, and then she was basically given to Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam. So she was proved later on as not as a slave. But by the way, there are many in the minds of some Jewish friends. They still believe that Hajar was a slave, hence she was not appropriate to be considered wife of Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam, because she was a slave. Her son Ismail is not appropriate to be the prophet, and that's one for the reason why they reject Ismail to be a prophet. But because of the dialogue, because of the persuasion that we had with our Jewish friends, we tried to convince them that Ibrahim had two sons, and both of them were prophets. Finally they acknowledge. I don't know about the faith, because faith is about your heart, but they acknowledge that Ismail alayhi salatu wasalam is one of the two sons of Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam. So if you come to the issue of sacrifice, for example, one of the reasons why they reject Ismail being was the person sacrificed by Abraham, because their Bible say the only son, the single son, but they know that at that time Ibrahim had another son, Ismail. Ibrahim didn't have any other son when it happened in Makkah, because Ismail was not born yet, and that's why the Bible say the only son. But they can twist it there. I'm sorry to mention this word. They make an interpretation that the meaning of only son is Ishaq. Why? Because they wanted to exclude Ismail as the son of Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam. But throughout the history, because of persuasion, because of the dialogue that we have with them, they began to acknowledge that Ismail is one of the two sons of Ibrahim. Now, when they accept that as Ismail is one of the two sons, then now there is no reason to reject basically that Ismail was the one who was sacrificed, because the Bible says the only single son of Abraham. He was the only son at the time because he's the older.
You're watching Muslim Network TV on Galaxy 19 satellite, Amazon Fire TV, Roku, as well as MuslimNetwork.tv. This is Imam Malik Mujahid, and I'm talking with Imam Shamsi Ali, who is an interfaith leader in New York and one of the most prominent interfaith leader across the country. We'll be right back after these messages.
your eyes.
Assalamu alaikum everyone, it's your brother Zain Bika from South Africa. One of the first educational programs ever produced for Muslim children was the ever popular Adam's World series. The colorful and comical Muslim puppets stole the heart of a generation. Sound Vision will be releasing brand new episodes of Adam's World with the launch of a Adam's World app. Subscribers will enjoy new Adam's World episodes as they are released, as well as all the classic episodes of Adam's World. So visit adamsworldapp.com now to learn more, subscribe and enjoy new adventures of Adam and his friends. And let's keep helping tomorrow's Muslims today. Assalamu alaikum.
Adam's World. Believe me, there's a lot to see. Bismillah, let's explore.
Welcome back to Muslim Network TV. This is Imam Malik Mujahid, and I'm talking with Imam Shamsi Ali. Imam, you being an Imam in America, active in interfaith, but you also are leader of the Indonesian community. I'd like to do a little bit about Indonesia. You know, in India, there is a very high level of nationalism. Actually, I don't know any country in the world is such a high level of nationalism, which has reached actually level of fascism. You know, the largest paramilitary party in the whole world is in India, called Rashtriya Swayam Sevak Sangh, and their leaders, party, you know, members are the president and the prime ministers and run the cabinet. So if you Google the image or the image.google or something like that, Akhand Bharat, which means United India, you will find their map includes Indonesia and Malaysia as part of India. And these maps date back to early 90s, and even now they keep coming up. They have this dream of uniting the India, which was divided up. So they have also the myth of Muslim oppressing Hindus. And one of the example is that look what happened to happening to Hindus in Indonesia. They're being oppressed and things of this nature. So I will come to Buddhist and what they say, but address this thing. What is, where are Hindus in Indonesia? What's happening with them, and what's the state of oppression there for against Hindus?
I think first, it reminds me about the concept of global khilafat that many people are talking around. And we Muslims also, in fact, you know, in many ways, kind of disagreeing with the concept that we have to have a unifying governments globally, because I think it is not appropriate anymore in our time where we have this nation state, and that's Indian nationalism reminds me that. But I think not many people are talking about now. The khilafat is being, you know, discussed by many. So this is one of the example how hypocrisy sometimes occurs in our discussions of religions. Now, coming to the history of Indonesia, before at the time we call it Nusantara, and that's why foundation is called Nusantara Foundation. That's my foundation here in America. Before basically Indonesia and the areas around, including Malaysia, even Thailand, even some portion of Cambodia and Vietnam, it used to be one kingdom called the Kingdom of Nusantara. Before it turned into Hinduism, it was Buddhism first, because China was dominant. I mean, the Chinese religion was dominant in the area at the time. And then Hindus came, and it became Hindu kingdom. Okay, so in other words, if they criticize that Indonesia now had become the largest Muslim country in the world, and they consider that is taking over, so it means they took it over also from the Buddhists, from the Buddhist people. So it turned now Hindu kingdom at that time, and that's why they built the largest temple in Southeast Asia, even in the world today, called Borobudur, and that temple is still preserved by the Muslim Indonesian. Later on, Islam came, and you know, possibly people thought that Islam came, you know, occupied that Hindu kingdom. In fact, now the Islam came there are different historical mention about this. Some people say that it came by the Yemeni people who came to Indonesia for trade. So they are business people came from Yemen to trade this sarun, called sarun, in Indonesia. And because of their behavior, because of their human character, many local people happen to be Hindu at the time, particularly in Java Islands. They're attracted to them, and they ask them, "Who are you?" And their response was, "We are Muslims, and that's why we are honest, we are humble, we are friendly." And because of that human character, the local people, began to be attracted to the religion, and they began to become Muslims. Some others say that Islam basically came originally from Gujarat, India, through Aceh, and that's why Aceh is considered the beginning of Islam. And in fact, if you go to Aceh, you will see many Acehnese people looks like Indians, and even the Acehnese food looks like Indian curry. And so some people say that in the 13th century, Islam began to arrive in Indonesia in Aceh, but the most authentic historical mention is about the Yemeni people who came even in the 7th century. In fact, some people say when Islam entered into China, it was also the beginning that they jumped into Indonesia. Basically, it's a very long history. So my point here that Muslim Hindu people who was mostly predominantly in Java at the time, turned to Islam without any compulsion. There is no fight, there is no war, there is no enforcement. It is true exemplary life of the Muslim who came to do business in Indonesia. And later on came some Muslim ulama, scholars, including from Ottoman Empire, to further strengthen the spread of Islam in Indonesia through what? Through cultural, persuasion. And that's why what happened in Indonesia, and that is the reason why Indonesia's Muslims are being criticized by particularly Saudis and the Middle Eastern, that we are not that genuine Muslims, because Indonesian people are still following some local cultures and traditions, because that's the way Islam came to Indonesia, through cultural persuasion. So there are some local art, for example, artists, they are doing that as a part of Islam. For example, the Hindu people celebrate the death of the people like 3 days, 40 days, or 100 days, maybe 1,000 days. Indonesian Muslim, particularly in Java area, they are doing also the same, but they do it through Islamic way. For example, reading Quran, listening to the lecture, and so on and so forth. But they are celebrating that to remember the dead. And I think it is still a cultural, if you may say, Hindu, that is still transferred into Islam. So again, there is no fact to say that.
I have heard that there is a version of Ramayana and Mahabharata also which is Islamicized in Indonesia.
Still, and that is in a form of culture and art, and it's still being played in Java particularly, and that is the unique characteristic of Islam when it arrives in any particular area. Because Islam, when it arrives in one particular area, it doesn't come to erase local cultures, and it's very important also for our American to understand that Islam come to America not to erase positive American culture, but we are coming here to enhance. We are coming here to perfect. In the language of the Prophet Muhammad, إِنَّمَا وُعِثُّ لِأُتَمِّمَ, and the word لِأُتَمِّمَ مَكَارِمَ الْأَخْلَاقِ means to complete. Okay, the good things is confirmed and affirmed by Islam, and that's what happening to the Muslim Indonesians. So they don't come basically to wipe out the traditions and the culture, but in fact they Islamize it. They continue it, but through Islamic ethics and morality.
So what about the accusation of Hindus are currently being oppressed in India?
In India or Indonesia?
In Indonesia, I mean to say.
That I can say it is baseless, because if you go to Bali, for example, which is the majority Hindu people there, in fact, Muslims sometimes are not allowed to build a mosque in Bali. Luckily enough that, the tolerance religious life in Indonesia is very high. And so there are around 56 or to 60% Hindus in Bali, and there are around 40% Muslims, and they can live side by side. But my point here that, in fact, even there are some Hindu in my own town from Sulawesi, for example, they have their own temples. They are free to practice. There is a military camp based in Makassar, from my town. Inside of that military camp, despite the Hindus are very, very small in number, they have their own temple. There's a mosque. There is a church. This is the religious life that we have in Indonesia. So the accusation that Indonesians have become intolerant to the Hindus, particularly, I think that that is baseless. There are some religious tension, particularly between Muslims and Christians in Indonesia, in some areas such as Maloko, in Poso, and some other cities in Indonesia, not because of religious issue, mostly because of political issues. Because our Christian friends are mostly affiliated to the Chinese, and Chinese people are, if I may say, almost 70% or even more, the Indonesian wealth are in this minority hands, in the hands of Chinese minority. And so there is a how you call social jealousy happen. It's not basically.
You're saying that Christians are mostly Chinese.
I don't say mostly, but they are, most of the Chinese are Christians. And so
most of the other way around. So most of the Chinese in Indonesia are Christians,
yeah,
and Chinese control good part of business.
Exactly, and that goes into social jealousy and tension between both communities, Christian and Islam. And particularly after the fall of Suharto in 1998, as you may know that during Suharto's era, the Chinese and the Christians were so powerful. Luckily that we have one called Habibie, President Habibie. He was the one basically that neutralized Suharto to Islam. But Suharto was basically fully controlled by Chinese and Christians. And that's why there was some time in the past where Christians are very, very dominant in the majority Muslim land, in the majority Muslim country. And because of that, Muslim majority later on feel that they have freedom and they have the freedom to express themselves. And because of that, tension happened. Just like what happened in Iraq right now. You know what happened in Iraq? Saddam Hussein was a Sunni. Sunni was minority in Iraq, but Saddam was in power. When the Shia came back, there's a tension happened between the two communities. That's what happened in Indonesia.
Well, I hope not to the level of Iraq, because it's a huge civil war, and I mean, your thing is not a physical violent assault in which both parties are armed or anything. So comparison. I mean, the tension is there, but now, I work on against genocide, and in Burma. Genocide of Rohingya Muslim is almost complete, and Burmese constantly see that they are under siege. Islam is taking over, and they say in Burma, Muslim have many wives and they have many children. They even convert to Buddhist girls and marry them. And while there is no evidence, actually, Islam number of Muslims there are only 2 countries in the world where number of Muslims are going down, officially speaking. That's one is China and one is Burma. But they have this myth. An example they gave, a look at Indonesia. They took over. So my question to you is, when did Muslim actually invaded Buddhist in Indonesia to eliminate them?
Yes, the word invasion, I think, is not proper word to use. As an Indonesian, certainly I have to reject that notion very, very strongly, because Muslim had never come to Indonesia to invade Indonesia.
Muslim army came to Indonesia?
None. As I said earlier, that Islam
the largest Muslim country in the world at this moment, there was no Muslim army which came from anywhere.
Yes, exactly. And Indonesia is the largest Muslim country in the world, 4th populous country, the 3rd democracy in the world after India, United States, and now Indonesia. Indonesia can marry between democracy and Islam. Women are very free to practice and to do their own lives. Each political party in Indonesia must have 30% candidate from the woman side. Woman candidate, and that is to show that Indonesia
that is required by law.
It is required by law. There's a constitution in Indonesia that every political party must have 30% female candidate for the parliament.
At least, but they can have more also.
Yeah, they can have more. There is a political party in Indonesia that happened to be affiliating to Islam called Justice Party, and it has more women, more than 30% women are basically members of the parliament. And so my point here,
Well, before you give your point, I think Republican Party should adopt that Indonesian practice at least.
Yes, we are at the perceptional wars. and it looks like America is so democratic, so free, so tolerant. But in fact, sometimes you'll find that practices are more in some other countries, including in Indonesia. But unfortunately, we don't have means to show ourselves with those evidence or proofs. But that's what the fact is. So we just want our American friends to know, and if you can go and do some more picnics to different countries, go outside of the United States and see the lives. So it's not only Muslim coming to the United States to see American life, but please, America, go out and see the life of others in different countries. Because sometimes,
maybe after the pandemic, they will listen to you, hopefully.
yeah, hopefully.
You're watching Muslim Network TV. This is Imam Malik Mujahid, and I'm talking with Imam Shamsi Ali, who's a scholar of Islam, a leader in interfaith movement in North America, and have a great historic insight into Indonesia, as he is from Indonesia. You're watching Muslim Network TV on Galaxy 19 satellite, Roku, Amazon Fire TV, and pretty soon on Apple TV as well. And muslimnetwork.tv is where we are 24/7. We'll be right back after these messages.
We are Justice for All. Headquartered in the heart of downtown Chicago, Justice for All is a global humanitarian initiative dedicated to raising awareness for human rights concerns impacting vulnerable minority groups. We promote policies that protect religious freedom, address the root causes of mass displacement, and recognize the plight of refugees and forced migrants. Our diverse team of staff and volunteers, led by Imam Malik Mujahid, work tirelessly to help Justice for All achieve their goals. Past campaigns covered a wide range of humanitarian concerns. Through Bosnia Task Force, imams and leaders of Chicago's Muslim community worked to ensure Bosnia became a top national issue. This led to life-saving American policies in Bosnia. A key accomplishment was helping to get rape declared a war crime. Initiatives also included Kosovo Task Force, Central African Republic Task Force, and Flint Coalition, which brought awareness to the water crisis affecting the people of Flint, Michigan. Highlights of our work include supporting Black Lives Matter, Parliament of the World's Religions, addressing climate change.
So wasteful consumption starts the ruthless production, and that's where we need all the fossil fuel in the world.
And prominent media exposure.
This is Imam Malik Mujahid, President of Justice for All.
And I'm the Director of Outreach for Justice for All.
And that's why we need to go back to what worked.
Today we're demanding an apology from the CEO of Costco.
The Chinese crackdown on Uyghurs and other Turkic people has only gotten worse.
Current programs such as Burma Task Force advocate for the rights of Rohingya refugees in Bangladesh, internally displaced populations, and all those denied freedom of movement and at risk of starvation. Through this, we mobilized thousands of calls to elected representatives. This paved the way for the U.S. to increase funding for Rohingya refugees from $30 million to over $600 million. 2 of our documentaries were featured on international news outlets. The Rohingya People, A Slow-Burning Genocide on BBC World News, and Rohingya Refugees Tell of Massacre was featured on CNN. We've organized rallies, UN mission visits, expanded presentations on campuses, promoted research and report writing, outreach to think tanks, media, and other influencers. Faith Coalition educates about the Rohingya genocide and crimes against humanity faced by ethnic groups in Burma. We've traveled to refugee camps, convened a meeting of Karen, Kachin, and Rohingya leaders, both to encourage cooperation and to guide them in congressional outreach. We organized Rohingya Advocacy Day. This led to over 100 participants visiting the offices of 60 U.S. senators and congressional representatives. Free Kashmir advocates for the people of Kashmir. Long-term goals include the call for self-determination, the end of the Indian military's occupation of the territory, and raising awareness of Kashmiri issues among the American people. After the August 5th reinvasion of Kashmir, we organized national protests in front of various Indian government buildings, partnered with Stand with Kashmir, and launched a petition condemning the Gates Foundation's decision to present Prime Minister Modi a humanitarian award. Save Uyghur informs Muslims and neighbors of other faiths about the ongoing cultural genocide of Uyghur Muslims and mobilizes public support. Our projects include boycotting Chinese products with our Fast from China campaign, pushing Bill S-178 in the Senate, and organizing a nationwide protest of Costco. Together, we can continue to stand up for justice. Justice for all.
Welcome back to Muslim Network TV, and Imam Shamsi Ali is with us. Imam, you mentioned a little bit Indonesia is the third largest democracy and things like that. Tell us a little more about Indonesia. How many islands, how many people? One person per island?
Indonesia basically is a very a big country, I know, as big as America. If you fly from Aceh to Papua, it will take you like 6 hours, to fly. It has more than 1,300 islands. Some of the islands are not occupied yet, still virgin islands, if you may say. And we have more than 275 million people now, where 85 to 87% happen to be Muslim. So it means that we are, in terms of number, the largest Muslim country in the world. If you combine the whole Arab countries, Indonesian Muslims are still larger than them, because the largest populated country basically in the Middle East are Egypt, and it's only like 80 million. And also at the same time, Indonesia, as the largest Muslim country, also is a very democratic country. Democracy have been, particularly since the fall of Suharto, Indonesia came back to even purer, more pure democracy than America, because America, we have this electoral system, while in Indonesia, we have one man, one vote. So really, Indonesians are participating in the democratic process of the political life in Indonesia. So Indonesia basically can be a proof that Islam and modern values can go hand in hand. Islam and democracy can go hand in hand. Islam and the freedom of women, Islam and the and tolerance, Islam and the freedom of minority can go hand in hand. And I think in Indonesia we have this Ministry of Religious Affairs, where sometimes we Muslims complain about it because they protect more the rights of the minority than the Muslims themselves. And it just happened. It's the reality. Now, President
that Pakistan is learning from Indonesia. They have just built a very large, probably one of the largest shrine for Sikhs, and now they're building some temple for Hindus. And Muslims are complaining, hey, you're using my tax money to build the temples for other people. So it seems it is the same thing in Indonesia.
Yes, it is. It's happened. It's happened. Sometimes. You can imagine if the government, let's say, show the support more to the Muslims than the majority, what would be the reaction? But so this is just a natural thing happening in Indonesia. But Indonesia, being the largest Muslim country, is not a religious country. It is not an Islamic state. It's not an Islamic country. The nation consider themselves neither secular nor religious. And that's why we have this Pancasila as the state ideology. And Panchasila basically is an inspiration of all religious teachings. Number one is about oneness of God. Number two is about humanity. Number three is about unity, national unity. Number four is about democracy. And number five is about social justice. Now, all these are religious teachings. So it's all these philosophies are derived from religious teachings that are, acknowledged in Indonesia. So I think we just wanted to say that Indonesia is very rich in terms of natural resources. Let's talk about culinary, because we love to eat. When we talk about Indian food, for example, I love Indian food because I love Pakistani food. I live in Pakistan 7 years. But when you talk about Indonesian cuisine, we are going to be surprised to say that it is difficult to decide what type of Indonesian cuisine is, because anywhere you go, you have a local authentic Indonesian food. You go to Aceh, they have their own. You go to Sumatra, they have their own. You have to Sulawesi, they have their own. But when you talk about Indian, from the beginning to the end, that's not the Indian food that we know, or Chinese food that we know, or Japanese food that we know. And that's possibly the reason why there are not too much Indonesian restaurant outside, because it's difficult to decide what kind of food that we're going to have. And so Indonesia is very rich in terms of cultures, in terms of natural resources. We have gas, we have oil, but unfortunately, Indonesia have been, managed corruptly throughout the history of this country. And this is the issue, corruptions.
Well, what about, I would say Ramadan is purely an all-around Indonesia, don't you think?
Rendang, rendang is one of the main food, but it is originated from Sumatra, called Padang. Padang is not that far from Aceh, and that's why if you eat rendang, it's mostly close to Indian curry, but has local flavor because it's close to Aceh. And as I mentioned earlier, the Islam came to Aceh from Gujarat, and so there's an influence of Indian here when you eat rendang, but there's some local flavor as well.
Okay, so how many Indonesians in the United States?
We are very small, basically. Approximately 50 to 70,000 only. I don't know why that not many Indonesian people in the United States. Even I don't know, but maybe that is the mentality of Indonesian. Even those who are here right now, they still think that they want to go back to Indonesia. They own a house here, but they say that when I'm getting old, I'm going to retire in Indonesia. I don't know, maybe there's a part of nationalism that you mentioned earlier. I don't know. But we are small compared to Bangladesh. Bangladeshi people in New York City, more than 100,000 Bangladeshis, only Bangladeshis. And among the fastest growing community in New York are Bangladeshi community, even more faster right now than the Hispanic in New York City.
So and where are these 50,000 Indonesian? They're mostly in New York area or scattered?
They're scattered, but mostly in big cities like New York, Los Angeles. We have some in Chicago, of course, not that many, but we have in Virginia, Washington, D.C., Houston, and some other big cities.
So how is the Indonesian relationship with the United States? I mean, it seems to be very deep at one time, when Indonesians were fighting Chinese-style communism. It seems you have been in conflict with Chinese in a double way. Once it was that communist type of revolution or something. I don't know what was its actual nature. And then later on, Chinese businesses, and which you refer to since most Chinese are Christian, people have this resentment because they control that. So is the relationship with the US strong now, or was it strong before? Do Indonesians have the similar opinion of United States as Pakistanis do? Pakistan being the second largest Muslim country, they don't like United States as much. Actually, they don't like Taliban and they don't like United States either.
It's just funny. So during Sukarno era, Sukarno was a very strong man, if I wanted to use that word. So he didn't want to be controlled by the Western, as you know that colonial power was so powerful at the moment. So he wanted to prove that he's independent. And that's why he wanted to have a great relation with some other major nation leaders, including Indian leader at the time, and then Yugoslavian leader, and then you have Chinese and Soviet Union, I think, at the time as well. So because of that, he had a great relation with communists. And because of that relation, communists have the opportunity to influence him. And the communism or communist people established a party that turned to be a very powerful party in Indonesia at the time. Not only powerful, that they did tremendous damage to the country. They killed a lot of generals. They killed ulama, Muslim scholars. And so finally, the communists were defeated by Suharto. So Suharto came into the power by the help of, sorry to mention this, CIA, as American, power. So again, America came back to Indonesia. Not only that, if you may remember that once East Timor was to be a part of Indonesia, it was because of, CIA want Indonesia to take over East Timor. And because of that notion and understanding of the history, President Habibie, he was a very democratic man. He was Western educated from German. And so he again gave the opportunity to be the East Timorese to express themselves, and finally they got their independence. So Indonesia then under Suharto had a very good relation, very good, especially that America gave a lot of help to Indonesia through IMF, World Bank and IMF. And so Suharto was, able to build tremendous infrastructure in Indonesia. Economic growth was tremendous in Indonesia during Suharto time. But unfortunately, Suharto was a military man. He was general. He used his iron hand, to suppress the people, particularly the Muslim themselves, because the Muslim, when you are suppressed, you tend to fight back. And so many Muslims were in jail. Some people disappear under Suharto. Finally, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala changed Indonesia again to become a democratic and free. In 1996, 1998, Suharto was finally forced to step down. During that era, Indonesia came back to the freedom. Still, Indonesia has a good relation with America, or under SBA, under Megawati at the time. Now, recently, from the last, I think, 5 to 7 years, China has taken over the dominance because of the power, because of the money that China has. China gave Indonesia a lot of loan money to build infrastructure. And because of that, I just came to know lately that when China borrowed money to any country, it is one of the agreement that the China will send their own people to work. So now China send many Chinese to work, even to become labor, just as a laborer in Indonesia. And this create tension also between Chinese and Indonesian people. So I can say right now that Indonesia is more in line into China, governmental wise, in terms of government, but the people do not like that. And so I don't know what is the position of Indonesia right now. Either it is to America or to China, but I can sense there's more to China at the moment. And that's why I still remember not long time ago, some Indonesian from the defense strategic industry wanted to come to the United States to sell their armed product and to buy some technology from America. They were rejected strongly by America. And the reason is a very simple question America asked at the time: where are you now? To us or to China? And Indonesia didn't give any clear response.
That's very interesting, Imam. I was driving in Karachi. I'm from Pakistan, and one of my relative, he's a little kid, about 5 years old, and he knew how to speak Chinese a little bit. I said, what? How in the world is he? So he said, well, his class fellow is a Chinese kid, so they are buddies, and he's learning Chinese from him, and that guy is learning Urdu from him. I said, that's strange. So it turned out there are, the clause which you say is that China not only give loans, but sends its people, seems to be happening in Pakistan also. But Pakistanis were very friendly to China. But now there is some resentment building up because of what these Chinese are doing. If you need labor, labor is not a problem in Pakistan. Probably same thing in Indonesia. Why do you think, America doesn't send Americans in that large number when they give aid. So why do you think Chinese are adopting this policy?
I think because they have a lot of people in China, and they need more they need more employment, and so it's a good opportunity for them to send them out. And basically in the clause it says only professional, so managerial level, but in fact they send their own laborers as well, and oftentimes they have their own compound. It has been discovered by some Muslims that they are trying to uncover what is happening, what's going on in the field that being funded by Chinese. They found that they have their own compound, and their people are coming to Indonesia, sometimes illegally, in many cases illegally. So it is through formal way. They send it through sea by the ships, and then Indonesia is islands, and sometimes it's uncontrollable. So it is what's happening. I think because China has overcrowded people, and they wanted to send out. I was in Caribbean not long time ago, and every Sunday and Saturday I can see the swimming pool filled with Chinese. And I asked the people why they are here. They say because they are building street. So even they are building infrastructure in any country. I was in Nicaragua, Managua, and all Chinese people are walking on the street. And these Spanish people, Hispanic people, they are desperately in need of job that they don't have, because Chinese government send their own people to work because the funds there.
Yes, Christine. So this is their international policy, to have people along with their aid. I mean, they have developed trillions of dollars of surplus trading with America, and we being consumer. I mean, probably my computer, my camera, whatever I'm using to connect with you have something in there, if not directly the whole thing, but something is coming from China. So we thought, product of Chinese, and they develop capital. Now they're using capital all around the world to have influence. But the people, I think this may be the strategy which will backfire, because people are looking for jobs in their country. They're not looking for Chinese people, but probably Chinese capital. I don't know when they're going to learn about that. Tell me, what did you learn in Pakistan? You educated in Pakistan. What did you learn there?
Yes, as I said, that I got a scholarship from the Rabita Alam Islami Muslim World League. So I had 500 rupees every month as my scholarship. So they pay tuition for us, alhamdulillah. So I studied, my bachelor was tafsir of the Quran, and then my master degree was in the comparative studies of religion. But on my way to Pakistan, I stood over to Nizamuddin, because I got the Tablighi visa to enter Pakistan. It's very easy to get at the time during the Al-Haq. And so I went to Pakistan, and then I continued to go out for Tablighi like 2 months. I went to Faisalabad. I went to even Swat, Swat, it's an area. This is very cold, even in the summer, very beautiful. And so I live in Pakistan, but I stayed in Pakistan 4 years, and then I got back to Indonesia to marry my wife, and then I brought my wife, and I continued my master degree. During my master degree, I was an assistant to Professor Mahmoud Ghazi. He was the Imam of Shah Faisal Mosque. So I was a recruit to be Muazzin, but at the same time as an assistant to the professor as the Imam of the mosque. So I was the assistant Imam for the Shah Faisal Mosque for particularly Isha and Fajr. And there's a funny story that every time when I led the Salat, people don't protest me because they didn't see my face. But when I turned my face to them, everybody came to me protesting. What is your beard? What is your beard?
Where's your beard? Oh, you have a beard problem.
Why you don't grow the beard? Yeah. Because this tradition in Pakistan,
so they have no idea of a beard is not readily available in Indonesian markets.
Yes, and it's a big deal in Pakistan that you have to have a long beard to be an imam. And so, alhamdulillah, I finished my bachelor and master degree. As I said, I lived there 7 years. I love, particularly Islamabad. It's beautiful because Islamabad was developed, by spatial management. It's called Capital City Development, CDA, City Development Authority, I think. And so it's beautiful, really. Islamabad is beautiful.
Well, Imam, as we are concluding, maybe a few more questions with short answers.
Sure.
I mean, you do a lot of interfaith. Do you think Muslims are properly able to learn the art of interfaith engagement along with its dialogue?
I think as we know that still the huge majority of Muslims in America are immigrants. And no matter what, as immigrants, we have sometimes immigrant mentality, home-back mentality. And that's make us so slow in learning about the environment where we live in. So I think we need to speed up the way we learn how to live as a community in the United States. And one of the most important things that we need to learn, that we are living not by the Muslims only. We are living with our neighbors. We are living with Hindus, with Buddhists, with Christians, with Jewish. And I think we have to have some adjustment. And that's the reason in the beginning why I was so much involved in the interfaith. And so let me mention this, the ayah in the Quran. And I think this is the foundation that we have to have in our interfaith work. يا أيها الناس إن خلقناكم من ذكر وأنثى وجعلناكم شعوبا وقبائل لتعارفوا. Now the word ta'aruf, as many Muslims fail to understand, it is not only between Muhammad and Umar or Uthman and Ali. That is between Muhammad and John, between Peter and Ali. Why? Because it began with Ya ayyuhan nas, all mankind. We created you from a male and a female, and we made you into many nations and tribes so that you get to know. Now, a ta'aruf is not only knowing one another. Of course, that's the very beginning of the journey. But ta'aruf at least has three main important meanings. Number one is to know one another so we can build an understanding and respect. Number two, it is about sharing. You know, we have to know that we have a lot of things to share with our neighbors. And that is a part of Rahmatan lil Alamin. It's about sharing our faith, sharing our tradition, sharing our contribution in sense of civilization, for example. You know, Muslims have built a great civilization in the past. And I think we have to share again with our Western brothers and sisters, sharing. And number three, basically, is about appreciation. Why appreciation? Because Islam acknowledges the existence of others' possibility and goodness, righteousness. Christian people can share with us also. Jewish people have something to share with us, and we must appreciate that.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Imam Shamsi Ali. Truly appreciate you being with us and sharing amazing conversation about Indonesia, its history, America, interfaith. And well, we couldn't talk enough about Tablighi Jamaat, maybe some other time, inshallah. Thank you so much. This is Imam Malik Mujahid, and I have been talking with Imam Shamsi Ali. You're watching Galaxy 19 satellite, as well as Amazon Roku, Amazon Fire TV and Roku. And we're always there on muslimnetwork.tv. And thank you so much for Aliza Majid for producing today's show. She's our intern producer, as is Sumaya Haider. Thank you. Peace. Salam.